Have you ever met someone who looks totally fine, but something about them feels too controlled, too independent, too polite, too low maintenance, and you can't explain why, but it also feels kinda sad? Here's the uncomfortable psychology behind it. Sometimes the quirks we call personality are actually survival strategies, not from loud trauma, but from quiet childhood neglect. The kind where nobody hit you, but nobody really noticed you either. And before we start, this isn't a diagnosis, it's a mirror. So if you recognize yourself, don't panic, just listen. Here are 7 personality quirks that can secretly come from emotional neglect. 1. You hate asking for help even when you're drowning. You'll spend 3 hours struggling alone instead of texting one person. And if someone offers help, you instantly say, "I'm good." Psychology calls this learned self-reliance, but under it is something heavier, learned disappointment. Because if you grew up needing support and getting ignored, your brain adapts. It decides depending on people is unsafe. So you stop reaching out. Not because you're strong, but because you don't trust help to arrive. This is attachment theory in real life. Your nervous system doesn't expect comfort, so it stops requesting it. 2. You apologize for existing. Sorry. Sorry, my bad. Sorry to bother you, even when you didn't do anything wrong. This can come from a childhood where your needs were treated like an inconvenience. So your brain learns a simple rule: to stay accepted, stay small. And that turns into a personality style: hyper-agreeable, low friction, easy to manage. It looks like politeness, but it's often a fawn response, people-pleasing as self-protection. Because when you can't control love, you control likability. 3. You're fine at all times, even when you're not. You could be breaking inside and still say it's whatever. You don't cry in front of people. You don't show need. You don't show mess. This is emotional suppression, and it's not random. If your feelings weren't responded to as a kid, if no one helped you label them, soothe them, or take them seriously, your brain stops sending them outward. You become emotionally self-contained. This is where emotional intelligence gets misunderstood. You might be good at reading other people, but terrible at letting people read you. Because being seen used to mean being disappointed. So you choose control over connection. 4. You overthink every social interaction afterward. You replay your tone, your facial expression, the timing of your message, and your brain keeps asking, "Did I do something wrong?" This isn't just anxiety, it's hypervigilance, a nervous system trained to scan for emotional danger. If neglect taught you that love is unpredictable, you start looking for patterns everywhere. That's your brain trying to prevent abandonment using analysis. It's like social comparison theory turned inward. You're constantly measuring yourself against an invisible standard, hoping you'll finally be enough to keep people close. And it's exhausting, because your mind is doing what your childhood never did: monitoring emotional safety. 5. You're weirdly independent, but secretly lonely. You don't need people. You can eat alone, travel alone, solve problems alone, and everyone praises it. But deep down, sometimes you don't feel connected. You feel like you're observing life through glass. This can happen when your brain learns early that connection isn't consistent. So it builds a life where connection isn't required. That's avoidant attachment dressed up as confidence. You're not cold, you're protected. And here's the twist: the more capable you become, the harder it is for others to notice you need anything at all. So the cycle continues. 6. You feel guilty when someone is nice to you. Compliments make you uncomfortable. Kindness makes you suspicious. Gifts feel like debt. Because if you grew up with emotional neglect, you may have learned that care always has conditions, or that you don't deserve it unless you earn it. So when someone treats you gently, your brain doesn't relax, it braces. That's a core belief issue, not a personality quirk. A deep internal script. Love costs something. So you try to pay in advance by overgiving, overperforming, and never taking up space. 7. You're obsessed with being low maintenance. You don't want big birthdays. You don't want attention. You don't want to make a big deal. And sometimes that's just preference, but sometimes it's a survival identity. Because as a kid, needing things may have led to disappointment or silence or annoyance. So you trained yourself to want less. Not because you're minimalist, but because wanting felt dangerous. This is the psychology of unmet needs. When your needs don't get met, you don't stop having them. You just stop admitting them. And that's the saddest part. Because childhood neglect doesn't always create broken adults. It often creates high-functioning adults. People who look calm, responsible, independent, mature. But inside, there's still that kid who learned, don't ask, don't feel, don't bother. So if you recognized yourself in any of these, here's the real takeaway. These quirks aren't who you are. They're what you learned. And what you learned can be unlearned. With self-awareness, with safer relationships, with practicing small needs, and surviving the moment you're finally seen. If this hit a little too close, you're not alone, and you're not too sensitive. You're just noticing the pattern. Subscribe if you want more psychology-backed videos that decode human behavior in a way that actually feels personal.